Hey everybody, welcome to another video review. Finally find myself in the mood to do one of these. I have a lot coming up. I have some J&D stuff I want to talk about. Maybe a couple of Nair and Joe Dunaway stuff that I've been promising to put up there. I know it's kind of hard. I have some, subscribers who are interested in only one thing. But I've been playing some video games, working hard. Work's been a little bit, stressful lately. Trying to put on some extra overtime, help with patient care and stuff like that. So, all of that stuff kind of gets in the way, real life, right? And when you're a little bit more tired because of what's happening in real life, whether it's work or, family obligations, then you don't have quite as much energy to do these reviews. And since I don't do this for a living, I don't want to kind of give like a low energy, low energy review. And I've had this sort of nagging little stupid cough, post-viral irritative cough for a while. So that makes it hard to talk for a long period of time without having these like annoying coughs and throat clearings. And I use my voice a lot talking to patients all the time. So that already kind of, wears away at it. So anyways, feeling a little bit better. And I got this, in the mail recently, wanted to talk about it. So this is, of course, the Walt Disney Classics Collection piece, fine art porcelain. It's one of the Disney Villains series. And the title is Who's Been Painting My Roses Red? The Queen of Hearts from Walt Disney's Alice in Wonderland. And it's sculpted by the great Patrick Romandi Simmons. It is not numbered the way a lot of these villains pieces were. You can see here, you have the nice certificate of authenticity, still sealed in its envelope with a gold sticker, by both Dave Smith, the archives director, and Dave Pacheco, the creative director, both named Dave. So nice and classy to have their names. And obviously these are the two gentlemen who's responsible for so much of the great work of the Walt Disney Classics Collection. A little bit about the Villains series while I show you the Queen of Hearts in all her glory. So in the early going, the Villains series was available only to the Walt Disney Classics Collection Collectors Society. And there wasn't actually a limited numbered edition of those made. Again, early on in the WDCC releases, they tended to make way too many of these, okay? And so, the concept of limitation was actually really, not essentially understood very well or followed. I have to think that, I think they started it in 1992, right? So 1992 sort of predates a lot of the big, like the so-called statue renaissance brought about by Sideshow Weta when they worked on Lord of the Rings. And so, the idea of limitation was still not something that was understood very well. So they made a ton of these. So what the Villains series did was that they had a window where anybody could order them. So they were kind of, I think, made to order. And within this window, they just collected however many people either paid a down payment or they paid up front. I don't know how they did that back then. But after the window closed, then they closed the edition. So technically, I don't think they ever really found out or if they do have the number, it's like a closely guarded secret, or since it's almost 20 years later, the information probably has already been lost. But I doubt that they really know how many of these pieces were made, since again, for her, for instance, she would have just been available for like a 6-month window of time, for instance, for the year that that she was released. And in this case, I think she was released in 2008. Okay, I believe, but I could be wrong. So in any case, as it turned out, the later villains releases, I think the last maybe 2 or 3, near the end of the line, they did actually limit them. One of them was the voodoo doctor from The Princess and the Frog, Dr. Facilier, and they only made, for instance, 750 of those, okay? But the Red Queen was a villain series that was released well before then, so again, she has no numbered limitation. But she is quite rare, quite desirable. In fact, a lot of the more rare and desirable pieces, and also I like to say probably some of the more ambitious pieces, were or are from the villain series. I own a couple of those myself. In addition to her, I also got Ka and Mowgli, and as well as Shere Khan, the tiger. So again, there's some pretty, classic pieces in that line, some pretty big grails in that line, and they're all kind of like classics in the villain series. So the villain series, the subset of the Walt Disney Classics collection, has some pretty amazing classics. So getting back to her, she's way bigger. If you look at my hand, she is way bigger than I kind of imagined. Again, when you just see pictures of these Walt Disney Classics collection pieces, you really don't have a very good idea of the scale. So hopefully, putting my hand there gives you some idea of how big she is. But when she showed her in person, I was like, oh wow, I have to figure out where to put her. It's really hard to figure that out. But in any case, that's number one, way bigger than you think. Number two, there's another version of her playing like croquet. And that is the lesser version. That's the one not quite as desired. In that one, she's not as angry. She has a little bit of a smirk or something, and she's kind of concentrating on her shot. I don't know how big it is relative to this one, but this is sort of like the Queen of Hearts to own. This is sort of her in her iconic, enraged, kind of face. And so this is the one to own. It's the more desirable one. In my opinion, it's definitely got the one with the more presence, and obviously more detail, more dynamic. So I've been looking for this one for a while, and I've kind of come close to buying it and never did. They're really hard to find, I think, with their boxes for a reasonable price. There was one that was available locally that I could have driven to get, but there were some issues with that piece when I have kind of a sharp eye, and one of the pictures, it looked like to me that there was some damage here or there, and ultimately I passed on that piece. So this one kind of had an interesting story. It was put on eBay from a guy in Florida. I don't think he is a huge collector, or maybe he is and he decided to move it. But in any case, a lot of that person's pieces came with a certificate of authenticity, but he had thrown away the box, or somehow the green box was lost. And if you take a look at her, look at the the roots of the tree, look at her small wrist, her crown, and then of course the red heart. I don't know, was the fan with the little tiny kind of stick that she's holding. You can see that this piece is extraordinarily fragile. It's just basically, screaming, pun intended, for there to be, fractures or breaks of some kind. And so the idea of shipping her without the original green box seemed like a disaster. So, she was an open bid. That means it's not a buy it now, where the prices are usually very inflated. She was like an open-ended, bidding war. And the first time, I think it went for well over $1,000, and so I lost out on it. I wasn't willing to pay that much. And these things go for quite a bit. I mean, if you have the box and everything, I think it easily goes for $1,400. Maybe a bargain at 12, but most of the time I think it goes for 14, especially on eBay. And the current one on eBay, I think it was being sold for over 2,000, which I think might be a little bit too optimistic, but that gives you an idea of the price range. Well, believe it or not, a week or so after that auction ended and I missed out on it, I got a second chance offer. Apparently I was the second highest bidder, and the original bidder got cold feet and for whatever reason decided not to go through with the purchase. I also decided at that point not to, because it was still quite a bit, and so she was put back on the eBay auction site. I watched it, and then I went for it again. And I swear to you that probably with less than a second to go, I think half a second, I put in, my last bid, and I did win her with a final bid of $911, which I had confirmed with probably less than a second to go before the auction ended. So that was like definitely a steal if ever there was one. I would say that $911 for this piece. And he included Federal Express shipping for a very small nominal amount. And then if you add sales tax, because eBay always charges sales tax these days, it was actually a pretty strong price. And then, of course, I was a little bit nervous whether this person knew how to pack, and I needn't have worried. It actually came in a huge box, double box, with peanut support and bubble wrap in all the right places. And it actually came without any damage at all. Everything was intact, which to me, I felt was like basically a miracle. So I was very pleased with how this person operated, and he definitely is a master packer. I do a lot of packing myself, both as seller and buyer. I've been doing this for over 20 years. And I have to say his was one of the most impressive and one of the most careful packing jobs I've ever seen. So again, very, very happy with that. So with that out of the way, let's just kind of take a look at this piece in all her glory. The one thing that really strikes my eye, again, when I buy a piece, it has to do something special for me. And I'm starting to run out of pieces to get. I mean, maybe one of these days I'll do like a panorama shot of all of my grails I've collected over the past couple years. But they all have to be something a little bit special, a little bit ambitious, to set it apart from, say, one of the more average, Walt Disney Classics Collection releases. And so the first thing that I really love about her is kind of the dynamic nature of the pose. I love the fact that it catches her sort of, screaming and enraged, which is sort of the iconic, picture of her that I have in my mind when I think about her in Alice in Wonderland. Obviously, because this is a Walt Disney Classics Collection piece, the detail is unrivaled. Again, it feels like she stepped right out of the animated motion picture into statue form. Fine art porcelain. Look at the detail of the face as she's yelling. It's just an amazing sort of pose. She's got, the rose bushes ripped up from the roots. And she, of course, has her little heart fan in her left hand. So overall, just, beautiful, amazing expression, accuracy, detail, a super cool pose. And it just takes up a lot of space, right? She's wide. She's got that big dress billowing out. She's raising over her head. So as far as a villain's piece goes, I mean, this has just a lot of presence, right? And again, so perfectly encapsulates the emotion and the core of who she is as a character. So that's number one. Number two, I just really love the bright colors, I've always loved the Queen of Hearts as a character just because she presents such a striking color palette. You got the red and the black, you have the green base, which is the grass, and then you have, of course, the colors of the underfrock. And it all just kind of comes together, I hope you'll agree, to create such a striking visual impression, you know? As with everything in Disney back then, they have a lot of plussing. So the crown is painted with gold paint. The roots of the tree is supposedly made out of bronze. I don't know if I believe that or not, but that's true. And now you would think that this little piece right here would be very vulnerable to breaking, and it is. It could crack right off of the hand, but this is not going to break itself because this is actually bronze, okay? And then finally, you have the earrings that are pewter, and then the branches up top are pewter as well. So these are some of the plussing that they put into every one of these pieces. Now, when I first got her, she was actually far from perfect because I don't think she was displayed behind glass. She was quite dirty. There was a lot of dust on her. And I spent like a good, I would say 40 minutes very, very carefully cleaning her. So what I did was I took Q-tips and just sank them in water. And I used the Q-tips to laboriously and gently just sort of remove all the dust and all the little nooks and crannies of her mouth and a lot of the cape, as well as all the little crevices of the bushes. So, you can see that here all the leaves create these little tiny crevices where the dust was kind of caked in there. So I had to use Q-tips, probably about 20 of them, just little by little getting it wet, and then using the cotton as it kind of fell apart into more narrow pointed areas to dab in there, get all that dust out. So hopefully you can appreciate that. And then for her dress down here, I just used a wet microfiber cloth. Obviously, a lot of Q-tip work around her hair, the inside of the mouth, and the white collar as well. And so I was cleaning it with a fine-tooth comb. I did actually find some very, very small imperfections. One of the corners of the crown, the paint is rubbing off. I know there's a super, super tiny area where the bronze root is connecting to the hand, where there's a little crack. I could tell immediately that this was not caused by shipping. This thing is actually still very, very solid. You can see I'm using it to move around. This likely occurred, at the factory itself. Probably because the hand, of course, is porcelain, and then you're trying to attach the bronze, the bronze root to the bottom of the porcelain hand, and then over time is separated from it might have separated from the porcelain. I think it actually might be like an entire metal, metal root from, say, here all the way up top, and then transitions into pewter. But in any case, with a 4K, I can actually barely show you, because if I go too close, what will happen is the 4K will not give us macro mode, and so it blurs. And so this is about as best as I can do it. So again, this imperfection is so small as it's actually impossible to even film with my iPhone 15. What else? There's a little bit of discoloration. Again, very, very subtle. A nice, interesting design element is that the actual rose bush itself is attached to the collar all along here to give it a little bit more support. So you can see that from this angle, that the edge is right there, and it actually touches, so that there's a lot of support there, which is good. It means that not all of the weight of this is on either the wrist itself over here. So it takes a lot of tension off of the wrist, which is kind of a nice, smart thing. I didn't notice that, by the way, when I first saw pictures of it. I thought that she was literally lifting the whole thing, from certain angles. This is, again, shows you the ingenuity of the design of the WDCC, where they hit it so well that I've looked at this, picture so many times on so many eBay auctions or for sale auctions. And my mind always just sort of thought that this thing was raised well above her head. That was kind of what my brain did. But in reality, it's actually connected to the collar and connected, in this quite a stretch, right, all the way here. And that gives it way more stability, makes it much less likely for the right wrist to crack. So there's that, another kind of aspect I like about it. I believe actually the little strands of hair may also be pewter as well. You can see her little bun and the red squeegee or scrunchie. Very, very nice. You can see the partially painted white rose, which kind of triggered her, and then the rest are red roses. Now, I don't know whether the little tiny paint defects like here is just age or whether it was originally planned that way. I tend to think it was planned that way because I think it is a little bit like genius that you have little tiny areas and spots where you can just see the little bit of white because they're so sloppy. There's a little white right here, as you can see, in both areas. And then there's just a barest speck of white, I think. Let's see. Like right here, you can see the line right here. So I looked at it pretty carefully. I'm of a mind that these areas of white are not actually paint flakes, because again, this is fine art porcelain. So remember that they're all glazed and fired in a kiln. And it seems unlikely, again, that the paint is sloughing off. Although not impossible. Again, my WDCC dress for Cinderella, which was one of the first releases ever by the Walt Disney Classics Collection. I have a YouTube review of that. Some of the black paint is flaking off of the mannequin that the dress is on. So it's not impossible. But again, I tend to feel because of the white here that the other spots of white here and up here are planned. Again, just kind of shows various little tiny differences. I wonder if other Queen of Hearts will have different paint. I'm sure they all this is basically going to be the same, but I wonder if there's like little tiny subtle changes for the other red roses, so to speak. But again, even if it was a paint chip or flake, then it's disguised beautifully because it makes sense that there would be certain little exposed pieces of white. So there we have it. I think I've said all that there is that needs to be said about this wonderful piece. I'm just going to try to go in as close as I can. You can see her little slippers, and then just essentially, try to, you can see there's a little bit of distressing here, and just kind of try to show all of the wonderful detail. Again, this is all porcelain. There you go. Yeah, I mean, again, I used to be a lot more picky about some of these things, but when you are obtaining, pieces that are that old, finding one new in box for anything less than thousands is very, very rare. And again, these are getting close to 20 years, over 2 decades old. And they're basically now, you can argue they're like antiques, antique treasures, and they're porcelain. Porcelain is very different from resin, and so over time, you're gonna see crazing. You may see a little crack here or there, as long as it's not, really bad where the piece is actually broken. You have to kind of learn to live with it a little bit. These pieces, who knows what they'll be like another 5, 10, 15, 50 years, let's just say. But yeah, I mean, overall, I'm super happy that I got this piece in my collection. She's probably the last villains one that I'm going to get. None of the other villains I'm as big a fan of, like Jafar or whatnot. I mean, obviously I have Gaston because I'm a Beauty and the Beast completionist. But with Ka and Shere Khan and, the Queen of Hearts, I think I'm pretty happy with my villains line. I don't need Facilier or Hades or some of the other ones. I don't have as much of an emotional connection. And their art design doesn't really, capture my imagination or scream at me. So there you go. I haven't had a Walt Disney Classics Collection video review in a while, so I decided to put this up. She's one of the more recent acquisitions, and again, wanted to give her due. Let's put this right over here, so people actually just do that. It's probably a little bit easier. Not let the glare get her. So there you go. Who's Been Painting by Roses Red, Queen of Hearts Walt Disney Classics Collection. Until next time, do take care.